The Minnesota Secretary of State's office recently launched online voter registration. Minnesota is now the 15th state in the nation to offer this service. Secretary of State Mark Ritchie is here to discuss it and a little bit about the controversy surrounding it. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
So let's begin with the online voter registration. On Tuesday, Governor Mark Dayton said that he supports the intent. What is the intent?
Well, a little bit over a decade ago, Arizona launched the first fully completed online voter registration. A lot of states like Minnesota had gotten kind of half there. You could look it up, but you couldn't fix it or change it. So Arizona launched this, Nevada, Nebraska, Kansas, Utah, most of the western states, and they began to see two really important things. Huge savings, up to 80 cents per registration. And in Minnesota, we have about 800,000 in our big year. So we're talking about some saving. The second thing was the current system that we have with paper, many people have been very dissatisfied, especially our local election officials, because voter registration is actually owned and controlled by your county, we call them county auditors or county election officials. They saw the cost savings. That's always important to them. But more important, they took the current system. They said, look, we have some real problems. You know, you have a voter registration form, and you know, let's say you're at the shopping mall or bus stop or at the state fair, and somebody says, do you need to update your registration, or would you like to register? And you thought, oh, you know, I moved or my name changed. And so you fill in all this information. Sometimes it's a driver's license and your birthday and all that kind of stuff, and you give this voter registration form to that person. You don't know that person. Sometimes they're hired companies. Our political parties hire companies from Los Angeles or Florida, various places. You give this paper registration to them, and you hope that it gets handed off and then handed off and then handed off, and hope that it gets to the county. And then the county has to hire people to try to read your handwriting. Of course, we don't teach writing anymore. And then they have to enter it and figure out about mistakes. And the political parties and others, especially these companies, copy the form and get your information. And then pretty soon people are getting, you know, direct mail solicitation or phone calls or that kind of thing. And in fact, we hear about this a lot because people assume that somehow we gave it to the parties or something like that. So the county election officials in Minnesota said, look, they've been doing this for 10 years. They're saving a ton of money, and we need a system that's more private and has more integrity. We want a system where if somebody doesn't want to turn over their paper information with all their phone or whatever to somebody they don't even know, and hope that it gets to the county, and hope that it gets typed, and hope that it's typed correctly, you can see the systems in other states where you go online at home, you're behind the firewall, and you enter your data yourself. So you're getting it accurate, and nobody else has access. So they said, come on, gang, you got it half done. Let's get this done, and let's get with the rest of the nation.
So you're talking about this system. Are you confident in it? Because some of the concerns that stem from it come from the unproven system that's been used to collect private information.
Well, of course, we have high confidence in it. For 30 years, we've been running the state's voter registration system. 30 years of deep experience. But more than that, we also are the keepers of the database of our businesses. So we have 3 decades of very serious, but we also, of course, always try to keep up with the latest. So when we build a new system, for example, we brought on maybe 15 different systems over the past few years, especially to help our military voters. They can now track their ballots, they can now order their absentee ballots. There's lots of things that we've done. Each time we use the best security people that we can afford. So for example, Minnesota has a fantastic security team as part of our state's IT system, Minute. But we also go outside because there are some companies around the United States who will try to hack your system. You know, they're kind of specialists in trying to get in and out. And so we have 30 years of good experience with this, and we take this very seriously. The real comparison is turning over your data on paper to somebody you don't know, and the fact that they're going to copy it and you're going to start getting emails or whatever, and then maybe it gets, because the point is to get yourself registered. And so the states who've done this, and I was on a program yesterday with the Secretary of State of Georgia where they're now have come on. I think maybe they might be the 18th state now. And he was saying, you know, we used to get these paper registrations and sometimes they would blow away in the wind or people would lose them. So he was thrilled that Georgia finally has kind of joined the rest of the nation. And I'm thrilled that Minnesota also has finished up this process. And, you know, lots of Minnesotans have used this, and our county election officials are thrilled. They're saving money.
And I do want to get to that.
Yeah.
But of course, we're running out of time. I need to discuss the key controversy that has stemmed, and that is members of the GOP, some DFLers, the governor, the legislative auditor, they all indicate to different degrees that this shouldn't have happened without some legislative support. Do you concur with this?
Well, it's common that the executive branch and the legislative branch might disagree on things, and that's why the founders in our Constitution, state and federal, said if there's a disagreement, it goes to the judicial branch. But it's in the year 2000, the Minnesota legislature said out loud in a very large piece of legislation, agencies and courts, electronic signatures must be accepted as the equivalent of written signatures.
What about the legislative auditor, though? He's nonpartisan, and he concurs that perhaps there should have been legislative support.
When there's a disagreement between the legislature, the legislative auditor, the legislature, and the executive branch, those issues go to the judicial branch. This takes lawyers and judges. It takes the judicial branch, and that's why the founders built that into the Constitution. So, you know, we're year after year, month after month, we're bringing on new services. So this is a service of Minnesota citizens, Minnesota voters.
And you stand behind it, come what may?
Yeah, you know, we often, a couple years ago, a number of legislators wanted to take away the right of citizens to use same-day voter registration. Some want to take away the right to use voter registration before the election. So there's often debate about voting rights. But when there's a disagreement on interpretation between the executive branch and the legislative branch, it goes to the judicial branch. It's not that complicated, and thank God those founding fathers who wrote that Constitution saw that, and they created a great system, and that's the Minnesota way.
And so I need to ask you, because you're not seeking re-election, you've been a strong advocate. We're moving off this topic just briefly for one last question, but you have been an advocate of electronic poll books. What's your wish? You're going to push it through in 2014?
Well, it's a lot of money, so I'm thrilled that Minnetonka has taken their money, you know, their local money, bought some systems, and they've been experimenting with them. And we're going to experiment in a number of counties and a number of precincts, you know, not thousands, but, you know, there'll be a couple dozen. So we'll know a lot more about the cost and the saving. Because the real bottom line question is there the savings to balance out the cost? The townships aren't too interested. They don't have electricity. It's kind of thing that, you know, doesn't necessarily make sense, but everybody likes to see what's new. But we don't know yet if the costs and the savings are going to benefit. Now, we've seen 5 good systems as part of our task force. Some were very innovative. You know, some were just a computer you open up and buy some software and, you know, that kind of thing. There are new ideas, and they seem to be heading towards lower cost, which is the kind of bottom line. But in the end, we have to see, is this in fact what, you know, a local community? Minnetonka has done a service, I think, to everybody by spending some of their own money. But when we start talking about it statewide, then the state would have to be involved. And that's really a legislative matter and a budget matter, and budgets are sensitive questions, let's put it that way.
And Mr. Secretary of State, unfortunately we're out of time, but we hope to get you back in here next session and maybe even in January when the recommendations on the electronic poll books come out.
Fabulous. Let's make a plan.
Thanks.
Thank you.